Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. This is the last podcast of 2023, and I'm going to get my housework out of the way. Join my Patreon. I'm blowing up my Patreon for 2024. We have tarot classes. We have live readings where you get to practice in a safe space with other people. You can also just get the energy reading of the week or 2 extra podcasts of Paranormal Karen where it's just me and all my craziness inside my brain. So, my friend James Leroy Wilson is here today. And he's very patient because, oops. And, okay, I had to pause it there, folks. We are doing the best we can with audio because I think I have an unstable network and James has an Android and I have an Apple phone. And, he has very patiently been okay with retaping because last time we were on the Discord and it had a pause or a delay, whatever, doesn't matter. My friend James Leroy Wilson is here with me today to knock out the last podcast of 2023. And in case you haven't noticed, folks, I am continuing. We'll see what happens. I know at least January is done, so hang in there. So James, let me ask you this. How was your 2023?
I think it went very well, actually. There were positive developments in a variety of areas of my life, but they are kind of personal, so I don't want to share them with everyone.
Sure, no worries.
I'm actually kind of happy with it. So.
Well,
I know that you've expressed some dissatisfaction.
What a great way to put it. Yes, there has been some dissatisfaction on my end. And so it's very nice to meet you. You are the person that had a good 2023. So we knew one of you was out there. And so now let's get into, you have been connected to my podcast or I talked to you on Twitter. Tell us, James, let's talk about your journey into the paranormal. How did you get tuned into this field?
Well, like a lot of kids my age, I began with In Search of with Leonard Nimoy and Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. And it was all pretty much just entertainment. But, I was curious as well. And then as I grew older, about 20 years ago during the Iraq War, or right before the Iraq War, I began to question everything about my faith, about my country and politics in general. And then I started going down avenues where I started reinvestigating some of the unusual things that happen in the world. And then later in the 2000s, I started listening to podcasts and got more involved.
So is it safe to say that conspiracy theories, I hate to say conspiracy because conspiracy theories have such a big thing to it, but when you start to question everything, that is really what enters in, whether they're true or they're crazy. Would you say you read into conspiracy theories? Does that sound right how I asked that?
Well, about 20 years ago, I found a book in the library by Jim Mars, and it was about conspiracy theories. I forgot the exact title of it. And I think a lot of it, looking back, was probably things that I would disagree with, and I thought some of it was pretty far stretch at the time. Nevertheless, I started to rethink a lot of things as to why are policies implemented the way they are? Why are these wars happening? Things like that. And then when you get right down to it, I mean, what is politics except the use of force? And who else wants to get their way with the use of force? Criminals and abusive parents and politicians.
What a great analogy.
And so I started thinking, the whole system, to call it corrupt is kind of a redundancy. Yeah. It is kind of a criminal organization. And when I start to view things that way, then yes, it does sound conspiratorial, but it's just what they do.
And also, you're like me. We're not talking about the person that goes in and does administration or files papers or something. We're talking about the people majorly making the decision, like the people that we vote into office. And I feel like they're directly connected to the media. I know they're supposed to look like they're against each other, but I don't think they are. Do you agree?
Oh, I think the media and politics have been in bed together, well, really since the history of journalism, going back to the War of Independence and the time after that, or like the beginning of the nation, newspapers were called, the whatever city Democrat or the whatever Republican, and they would just promote their side of things. And I think sometime in the late 20th century with Watergate and Washington Post and CBS News, there was an illusion of objectivity in journalism. That happened for about one generation, maybe. And even then, it probably wasn't true. But people who remember it think back to that and think that everything's gone crazy. And I think it was crazy before then and got back to being crazy.
Yeah. They used to say like what was his name? Cronkite was just giving the news with no opinion. But I don't even know if that's possible when you think about where the footage comes from or what we're really seeing or who handed him the stories. Like, I think the CIA is probably in charge of a lot more than we've ever thought.
Oh, yes. I think even the far right groups in America, I'm beginning to think that they were pretty much all of them psychological operations by the CIA. And I've noticed movements that catch on, I think, were funded by the CIA. Grassroots movements that die or always seem to be struggling, like the Green Party or the Libertarian Party, I think those are genuinely grassroots. And when the CIA comes in and tries to promote them, it's actually to try to destroy them. But I think a lot of the dialogue that we're hearing now, I think the funding ultimately draws back to federal agencies such as the CIA. Maybe we could just say the CIA is maybe not just specifically the CIA, but just the whole intelligence operations of the feds.
Mm-hmm. And the military.
And the military, yes.
Yeah, I even wonder about our history now. Like, people want to look back and say, "Oh, George Washington didn't tell a lie or this or that." We don't know that, and we definitely know we don't have the whole history on what we did to the Indians. We wiped out the people that were here before us. So it is interesting to think has this been forever? Is our history even our history? Do you ever think back that far, or do you think it really was created at a certain point?
I think it goes back to the beginning of of the state of civilization, you could almost say. One thing that uh, the Russians and Chinese have been right about, I think, is no matter which party is in power in the United States, the policy is the same, especially the foreign policy of uh, expansion and domination. And I think even if communism never developed in Russia or China, they would be enemies because we would have made them enemies because they were so big. There were two countries that we could not dominate.
Yeah. It really is the hate your neighbor thinking. You got to hate your neighbor for whatever reason. If he voted for Trump, if she voted for Biden, you are supposed to hate your neighbor. And then it's on that global. I mean, it goes all the way back to watching Rocky. He has to fight the Russian. We want him killing the Russian. You know, it's almost like if they don't have an enemy, they have to create one.
Right. And I think with the Russians specifically, and this is not in defense of any Putin or any current war or anything, but just in the general scope of things, Russia's been an enemy of some sort for so long. And I think, they're white and they're Christian, so they're nice people to stereotype and go after and still not think of yourself as a bigot because they're white and Christian. So they're fair game for suspicion and ridicule. Nobody's going to call me a racist if I hate the Russians. So might as well hate the Russians.
That's kind of brilliant. Also, that's interesting because I was thinking for a while there in all the movies, everybody was fighting the terrorists. And of course, in this country, the terrorists are almost always Muslim. So that's a pretty incredible point to make there about being against Russia. What is, I'll say one conspiracy too far. What is the one conspiracy where you go, all right, I got to draw a line there? Is it like moon landing? Is it aliens? Is there one where you go, okay, I got to step out of this conversation?
Oh, I don't believe many conspiracies, if you put it that way. Anything where a minority is to blame, except for maybe the rich and powerful at the top. But anything where it's the Jews or the genderqueer or African Americans, anytime where a distinct minority and a historically oppressed minority is the target of conspiracy theory, I don't believe it. I don't think that there's any Marxist New World Order conspiracy theory. I don't believe any of that. Seem to want the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and all of them to be greedy capitalists to impose the New World Order, and also these like cultural Marxists who want to make everything equal. And it's like people who feel powerless want to put everything they dislike onto specific groups of people. And so they're fascists one time and they're greedy another time and they're Marxists another time. And I think at the very top there are just several warring factions. None of them are Marxist, and I'm not a Marxist either. But I think anytime any left-wing conspiracy theory. I don't think those exist. Not really. And
I agree with you. I think sometimes it's almost like we have a border crisis, but the people that are trying to come over, that are poor people from Mexico that are trying to build a life, it's like there's some conspiracy that they are part of a mastermind to overthrow America. And it's like, I think they just want to eat and have a job. I think that's not the border crisis is something else, but to sort of blame it on those people, then now I see exactly what you're saying. I never even thought of it that like expanded, James. That's really smart. Do you think, maybe, I wonder if I should take a break and come back on the other side with this. No, I'm going to go right in. Do you think we have a democracy?
No, but I should say, I don't really believe in democracy. I guess you could say I'm an anarchist. I don't really, and when I say that, I'm not saying that I have a vision for society that I want to impose on everyone. It just means that I don't believe in authority. I don't believe in inherited authority. I don't believe that we have to use the current institutions that oppress us and think that they can be reformed, because I think it goes back to them kind of being criminal organizations in their own way, even if the people at the top don't think of themselves as criminals. When you're engaging in murder, in war, which is mass murder, when that is kind of your policy, I mean, what are you, except a criminal?
Yes.
And democracy doesn't justify things like that. And democracy doesn't justify me disliking what my neighbor does and trying to pass a law to ban what my neighbor does.
Right.
So I don't really believe in democracy in that sense. Now, as far as, voluntary organizations, I think it'd be great if they were all democratic, all the churches were more democratic and all that. But as far as the state, the nation state, the government, democracy only goes so far. I think.
Yeah.
The democracy is the moneyed class bribing the voters to prevent revolution.
Holy cow. I think we've got about 5 bumper stickers already, James. I think you've already said 5 things that should be on bumper stickers. I'm going to take a break and we're going to talk about anarchy, and then we're going to go up one level to aliens. So everybody hold on. We'll be right back. MedicallySpeaking.com is a prophetic shop that focuses on your inner alchemical transmutation. And I needed an alchemical transmutation to say alchemical transmutation. See, Toria, you did it. When you're looking for activations to change your aura, wisdom and insight to heal your past, and alchemy to live your highest vibrancy, you will most certainly enjoy the array of offerings you will find at hermeticallyspeaking.com. Created through the teaching of the Hermetics, Toria, who's been on my podcast many times, provides personalized guidance that caters a feast specifically from the higher realms to you. You'll leave each session feeling empowered and loved, having gained ancient knowledge for your soul's nourishment and growth. Believe me, I know. I've worked with Toria and she is terrific. Everything you need is within you. So come remember, activate, and expand your knowing at hermeticallyspeaking.com. So I call myself an anarchist for sure. And I believe that, what is the saying that if capitalism is so great, why does socialism have to bail it out every 4 years? And right. And I do believe in socialized medicine. And I think people don't understand what that means. They can say, I don't want to lose my doctor. You won't lose your doctor. Socialized medicine means you go to your doctor bills the government. He does not bill you. That's what it looks like. So I think it's a mishmash of stuff, but I feel like I'm a peaceful anarchist. But I don't know. Is it I'm going to make a big leap here, but on Showtime, there was a show about Waco. And of course, it had its slant, and David Koresh was no angel, but it almost seemed like the other side that the government wasn't telling us about, and how they just what they wanted to control there. And I just feel like I don't know how we can straighten out this country without like overthrowing everything. What do you think? I mean, you sound like a peace person like me, but any ideas on how we get there?
No, no, I don't. I've actually kind of been more withdrawing, you could say, more withdrawing into myself, but more into the spiritual side of things. And I do believe that's where it really does begin. That peace does begin with me, or peace begins in me. That not only should I be a peaceful person, but like in my inner life, I should feel a sense of peace, and then have that manifest into the outer world. And I do not know how to capture institutions and fix them and reform them, or overthrow them and try to replace them with something else. I can try to love my neighbor as myself, and uh, be a good Samaritan and do things like that.
Yeah.
And I really don't know. I do not have a plan as far as fixing things. And that's why I say I'm an anarchist. But because I don't believe in the systems that we have, but I also don't have a plan for their replacement. And frankly, I enjoy a lot of this stuff. I enjoy football and movies and music and all the pop music, all the corporate entertainment. I enjoy a lot of it. I enjoy the internet and all these things. And I'm not saying, overthrow it all, because I don't know what I want, but I'm willing to give up.
Right. You don't want chaos. Right.
Right. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. The chaos of a violent
Overthrow.
revolution.
Yes, where we can't get water or something. We don't need that.
Right.
Now, so I'm assuming you are a believer in UFOs and aliens, correct?
I am actually kind of skeptical about that. I think there's so much more in our planet that we don't know about. But I should put it this way: the advanced technology that we might be seeing, I don't see why they necessarily had to come from another planet or another race of beings.
So when people say the stealth was information we got from reverse engineering a spaceship, you're like, no, I think we got some smart guys that did it.
I think it's very possible. I well, yes, I think I'll go ahead with my theory about all this. I think the aliens are us from tens of thousands of years ago. They left the planet probably before an ice age, and this might have been a few ice ages ago. And they left to escape, and they're coming back, but because of the relativity of time, they might have been gone only a few generations, while thousands of years have passed on the earth. And when they came back, they're the ones who built Samaria and Egypt, and have been maybe kind of the leading class, the ruling class, over the rest of us ever since. I think it's kind of a silly theory, but
No. We're quite aligned on this.
oh, good. Because I know that it's possible for all the conditions of life as we know it to exist on other planets. I mean, it's theoretically possible, but there's so much more to that. It's life forms that can look into the sky and see patterns based on the positions of their sun and their moons and things like that, how it relates to everything else in the sky, like the zodiac and astrology. That was our original technology because it helped us think in terms of time and planning. And are we saying that on another planet that has life, that they have creatures that developed that kind of insight or had that vision to look into the sky and see those patterns, or have some other way of kind of inventing time? I mean, I don't know. It seems like all of it is kind of a stretch. I think a lot of it just came from here, and we probably had more advanced telepathic abilities before that defied the laws of physics and things like that. And I think that explains a lot of the physics defying aircraft we might see today.
I think so. I kind of agree with you. The aliens came back and they're like, boy, you guys have gotten old, is I think what they think. They go, you guys have not aged well. That's my feeling. But I think I agree with you. I think that maybe it was the Anunnaki. I'll never forget one time, Courage, my animal communicator friend, Courage would not stop barking at something that wasn't there. And he never did that. Never. Sometimes he'd watch things that weren't there, but Courage was not a barker. And he was really going after something. And the animal communicator told me it was like a man with a bird head, who I think is Thoth, who I'm pretty sure is connected to the Sumerians. Didn't we think the Sumerians were kind of who made humanity and then left us here? But it's interesting that you think from the past, because I think they're us from the future and they're trying to get us to not screw it up like they have seen. Does that make any sense how I said that?
Well, that very well could be as well. I just don't understand time travel going backwards like that as much as I could see
going forward,
say going onto a spaceship going near the speed of light for a while, coming back, and I've only aged 3 years and everyone else aged 100 years or something like that. I understand that relativity. I don't know how it works going backwards.
Yeah. So in other words, to me, the backwards would look like if we went back in time and, well, then you get into that weird space where, like, if we went back in time and changed a butterfly in 1776, America might be communist now or something like that, like shifting the front of that timeline. But you know what else I think that we don't give enough credit to is we always think everyone behind us was not as smart or they weren't as evolved. And when you go back and see Pompeii, and they give you the history of how Pompeii was built before the volcano, you're like, oh, so they had a sewer system and they had a light system, and they, like, we think they're barbaric, and then you look at the pyramids and it's like, no, they had a light system and an energy system. So I think we always think we're getting smarter, and we're probably not. We might even be staying the same but reusing the same information. How does that theory sit with you?
I think there's something to that. It very well could be that there was no literacy or writing for most of human history, because we had telepathic abilities and our hearing was so much better and things like that. And maybe telekinetic abilities, to move matter and things like that. And now I forgot where I was
That's
going.
okay. I have something to add in there, right? Exactly as you, I telepathically blocked your thought so I could get mine in.
Okay.
It wasn't Tesla. It was somebody that didn't write things down. I don't know who it was. It was like a famous, I'm going to say a famous thinker said, once you write something down, you forget it. And I thought, that's very interesting. And now we're the opposite. Like, if I don't write it down, I will forget it. I have lists everywhere, but I still remember. But I think it's interesting that once you log something and put it away, maybe they did not only have better telepathic, but better memory.
Oh, yes. And I'm reminded of the 20th century cultural commentator Marshall McLuhan. He wrote about the development of writing and then of television and radio and things like that. But even when people started to read, their minds kind of closed off a bit. I'm not saying their intellect closed off because they maybe writing and the intellect in some probably have some sort of a relationship, but just the mind in general, our senses were kind of devolved into now we hear less and we need to see more. We need to be reading and we don't hear the sounds of nature, and we read this small print and we have these electric lights at night and we don't see the stars very well.
Boy, is that true. And not that we're against reading and knowledge. Obviously, you're a very well-read person. But I remember not only did I have everyone's phone number memorized, but I remember sitting and buying a car when I was in my 20s, and they were like, we're going to need your insurance policy. And I rattled it off. And they were like, we're going to need your driver's license. All right in my head. Like, there was I don't know what I thought. I was afraid to write. I was afraid of everything. So I thought I better memorize all these numbers. So I had all of that memorized. But also, when you read a book, like, it's one thing to read a book. Like, I have trouble. My car is burning oil. So it's one thing to go on YouTube or read a book about how that works and how to do it. But if I read something else, you're directing me somewhere. There isn't imagination. There isn't room for anything else. If you tell me this expert wrote this book on baking, then I read it. Now I've formulated all my opinions about baking instead of thinking for myself. So I think we are moving into a space. That's what the expansion of social media is finally, in a good way, is it's showing these other options that we don't have to believe just one. Does that make sense of what you were going to say about reading and being directed in one direction?
Well, I think so. I'm just thinking, on the whole, social media has been a very great thing. And there are times that it has gotten ugly, and I think teenage girls and Instagram are apparently not a good
Mix, yeah.
Things like that. And but on the whole, we have become more interconnected through the technology that began with the writing, and then the printing press, and then telegraph and radio, television, and the internet. I think it's all been to the good, and I support the progress of knowledge. But I think maybe it is all focused in maybe a two-dimensional direction or just one direction, and we're not getting a broader human experience.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. Do you want me to give my Bigfoot theory?
Yes. In fact, hold on a second. We're going to take a break right here. We're going to come back with your Bigfoot theory. Okay, folks, hold on one second. Hey, everybody, how's that spiritual awakening going? I know. Don't worry. Help is here. HighlySpiritualPerson.com is a haven for spiritual misfits and empaths navigating spirituality and mental health. My friend Camille has a plethora of resources on her site to help you on your spiritual journey, even if you're just starting out. It includes individual and collective Reiki sessions, personalized guided meditations, sleep affirmation tracks, and so much more. Camille has so much to offer. She's going to be on my podcast in December. I can't wait to talk to her. Her blog posts and podcast episodes explore spirituality and are great for folks carving out their own path. She has written 2 easy to follow guidebooks, one on breathwork, and the newest book is called Manifestation is Easy, and it features 22 step-by-step manifestation techniques, as well as tips and advice on how to overcome the most common blocks and start changing your reality. Go to highlyspiritualperson.com. I promise you will get lost in how much information is in there. It's one of my favorite rabbit holes. All right, James, what is your Bigfoot theory?
Well, and it didn't originate with me. There was a researcher from Texas who was on the podcast Where Did the Road Go a few years ago, and he thought of the Sasquatches to the human as the wolf is to the dog.
Oh.
And that kind of makes us, Robert Anton Wilson called the human being domesticated primates, which is basically what we are. And well, what are dogs? Domesticated canines, and so the wolf is bigger and stronger and more evolved in every way, and is probably a lot smarter than a dog, but just not in a different, but in a different way.
Okay.
Wolves are not smart when it comes to relating to humans the way dogs are, but they know a whole lot more things. And I'm thinking Bigfoot is, and I don't know what happened. Probably some sort of ice age kind of separation, or they were cast off from civilization or something. But they developed in the wild and not within civilization, and they developed in the wild, so they have all this knowledge of nature. And I think their consciousness probably expanded so they could do things like disappear, things that we are not able to do or can no longer do or don't think we can do. I think Bigfoot, because I've read our friend Joshua Cutchin has written about this with Timothy Runner. Yeah, they've both been on your show.
Yep.
And
I think you're right.
I think they do not see it the way I do, but they've reported on hundreds of these paranormal incidents related to a Bigfoot sighting, because you wouldn't think of the Bigfoot sighting necessarily as paranormal. It's just seeing a cryptid or viewing a flesh and blood animal. And I'm wondering if they are flesh and blood, but also more than that, because their consciousness has evolved to such a level because they were not domesticated, because they did not have to do stupid things like learn how to read. they developed in a whole different way. Their minds developed in a whole different way. And so that's kind of how I view, what might be happening there.
Okay, so I kind of love that. So you're kind of saying like the evolutionary chart starts with Sasquatch, not an ape.
Or that it ends with Sasquatch and not us, perhaps.
Well, the way we're going. Okay, I'm going to back up your theory for 1 second. So hold your thought, because a lot of people, I'm not like a huge Bigfoot that's not where my curiosity goes, and the shows are terrible. The Bigfoot, I don't know if you ever saw the Bigfoot expedition. They caught a Bigfoot, but they couldn't get a good shot of him even in the cage, and then someone forgot to lock the cage, which seems like if you've been looking for Bigfoot for 20 years, locking the cage seems pretty much it escaped. That was the only episode I saw half asleep at night, and I was like, yeah, I'll never.
Yeah, I don't watch Bigfoot
it's not
shows. But another thought came to me, and again, it's I don't remember her name. An expert on the Lake Champlain monster.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in Vermont?
Champy. Yep.
Champy. And I heard this expert on the podcast Spin All of America, and he asked, well, why hasn't it been caught, or why haven't there been more visible or like more tangible evidence? And she said, well, it's probably because it doesn't want to be found because it knows it will be shot at.
Mm-hmm.
And well, that's why we haven't found a Bigfoot, or captured a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't want to be captured. And it knows the planet a whole lot more than we do. So it knows how to evade. And I think it knows how to literally dematerialize. I think that's how advanced its consciousness is.
That is so. Also, the one thing you put in there that nobody ever talks about is maybe it's smarter than us. Like, we assume it's more primal, but maybe it's literally smarter than us. And that is the part that people don't know, is they kind of go in and out of dimensions. They go in and out. I remember a guy yelled at me once on a radio show because he was like, man, you just always go too far. And I was like, well, no, that's why they do disappear, and sometimes we do see them. There is almost no evidence of them other than like sometimes you'll see a nest or a camp or something like that. But that's why we never find a dead Bigfoot. And that has always been the theory too with the aliens. Maybe they're not coming down. If they see how many bombs are going off, they're kind of like, yeah, I don't think we announce ourselves yet. They don't seem that friendly. But I agree. And also, from talking with my animal communicator friends, when we have been finding lost animals, I know people, I'm sorry I repeat my stories, but they seem to have a different time. They will pop up, will be like, no, the cat is in the log pile. And the cat will be in the log pile 3 months after you were looking for the cat. It just shows, it's very strange. I do think even some animals, when they run away, the farther they are away from us, the less they have that domestic connection, and the more they go back into their sort of instincts. So I kind of love this theory. I never thought of it this way. I had one more thought in there. They say that our DNA is actually quite different from apes, and an octopus has a DNA that is from nowhere. We cannot connect octopus DNA from anywhere. In fact, they think it kind of is something that came from a meteorite. But our DNA is closer to a dog DNA than an ape. Have you ever heard that theory?
I've heard it. I haven't really investigated it. I have also heard about the octopus, and I am in agreement with that. I think there are extraterrestrial elements that were added in to how they came here. I'm not saying that they are aliens, although they might be. But definitely I could see that something came out of some alien stuff helped in their formation.
And also, not only are octopus kind of they're unbelievably fascinating, everything about them, and they are almost kind of the perfect machine sometimes. Like when one arm falls off, it grows another. Sometimes an octopus will cut off its own arm, and the arm will run away to try and lead a predator away from the general body. Like it's a fascinating. You could just about octopuses forever. I find them beyond fascinating, and much like aliens, not that attractive. they're just, they're
Right.
just kind of. They don't look friendly, but they don't look unfriendly. But they kind of just look strange. Yeah, I guess you could say. I guess I don't think I'm going to meet a lot of resistance in saying that octopuses look strange.
I think anything with eight legs or whatever just kind of freaks us out. It's like that. Like insects are one thing, and a lot of insects we don't like. But 6 legs and you eat up, and then the spiders and the octopus, and
Yeah,
they make us uncomfortable. Probably would even if like the spiders, even if they weren't poisonous, I think they'd freak us out.
yeah. What if they're really friendly and we just can't hear them? I like your Bigfoot theory. Do you have another one of those about something else that I might be open to hearing? I should say might change my mind.
Oh, I'm not thinking of anything specific. How maybe if you want to throw out an idea and
Sure. I left you hanging there. That was a bad interview on my part. I just keep thinking about when I had the guy on my podcast, not Kutchin, but the other gentleman you mentioned, and he was telling the story of a guy that his car broke down at like 4 a.m. This was like in the 50s. And he got out of his car and he started to run because it was the nighttime. And he was like, I'm going to have to run to the freeway. And he ran straight into a Bigfoot. And this was not when this was popular. This was not like this thing beat him up. And he was traumatized for the longest time. So that was an awful story, but a fascinating story because I don't know if we think of these things as friendly or unfriendly, but he was in the hospital for a long time. That thing beat him up. And as for this going like in between dimensions, the missing 411 stuff, or is it missing 911? Yeah. Where people just are in national parks and they just disappear. They just like 10 feet away, I turn around and James is gone. And then later they find your clothes folded. I don't know why I made this you. That was kind of mean. Someone will disappear. Later they'll find their clothes folded up in a pile or their shoes somewhere else. Or one little girl they found, and it was the most interesting story. Her parents were in a mountainous area, and the little girl disappeared. And within 20 minutes, they had everyone looking for whatever reason. It wasn't like we need 24 hours, whether it was the Rangers or whatever. And they found her like maybe an hour later on a different mountain where there was no way somebody would have had to pick her up with a helicopter, bring her over. They found her, and she said, the dog man took my hand and I went with him. and most people do not get returned. But it was like the most mind blowing. It was one of those things because I have had a weird experience where I went through a wormhole and I just ended up somewhere where there was no way I could have made it in that amount of time.
Yes, I've heard that.
That weird. So I wonder if that was a Sasquatch that picked her up, and maybe they were nicer. They were like, this is too young. I think we'll let her go. But do you think that's what's going on? Maybe with the missing 411s?
Well, it could be, and I guess to answer your question about Bigfoot and a lot of the phenomenon is that it could be many things at once. It could be a flesh and blood creature, or it could be some sort of other spirit manifesting as a creature like a Bigfoot, with the intention of scaring us, or with some other intention, maybe an angelic intention. I think maybe in the same way with haunted houses, maybe there are some entities that are just kind of caught in a time loop of some sort that we sometimes see, and that's one kind of ghost. And then there are these other spirits. Some of them are malicious and they want to frighten us. They can't really physically harm us, but they can frighten us for reasons we don't understand. But they all might be called a ghost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it could be any number of things that it could be. And so I think a lot of things, and especially UFOs, which come in all shapes and sizes, literally, and you don't any kind of a spirit might take that form for reasons of their own, and then other things might be there could be just a whole other category of being that are just passing through, and they don't acknowledge us because we don't matter to them,
right?
But we see them, and it could be a breakaway civilization on our own planet with experimental craft, or our own military, or somebody's military working with craft. And I'm not ruling out the recovered technology, but I don't trust the sources out of Washington,
right?
That make those claims. And although I do appreciate, I love it when Jeff Phil comes on.
Isn't he great?
And I understand why he believes what he believes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't dismiss it. I'm suspicious of a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, listen, my friend, thank you for coming on, and thank you for retaping. I'm sorry you had to do this twice. There's a lot of people out there that are going, I know what it's like when Karen screws up and we have to do it twice.
It turned out to be like an almost 98% different show.
Yes, it did. It did. But there was such a weird delay. And when I went back and listened to it, I was like, we sound like we're on different planets. But I like this one even better. And I know you're not a podcast out there guy. You're just a regular guy. Do you have a place where you would like people to follow you, or not interested in putting your stuff out there? You call it and I'll let you decide.
Oh yes. I have a link tree, James Leroy Wilson. I do have a monthly column at a place called mirror.com.
Great.
And I'm teaching a class on New Thought at a Unity Church here in Nebraska, which is available on Zoom. So if people want to reach out, And I should say that anything I said here is in no way expresses the opinions of Unity or my Unity Church or anything like that. Most of them are pretty normal. So
that's cool.
But people can reach out if they want to read my stuff. James Leroy Wilson on Facebook, James L. Wilson on Twitter. And I hardly ever post on Instagram, but that's also James Leroy Wilson, I think.
Wonderful. And I'll try and get your link tree in the notes. And then I am glad because last time you were a little more quiet about stuff, and now I think this is great. I think everybody should go sign up and listen. So
well, it's 4 months. It's 4 months later, and so I had a better idea. This is coming out pretty shortly, right?
Yes, December. I think you're December 15th. And I keep saying you're the last. The last is the Predictions podcast, which will be out on the 28th.
So I'm the last normal one.
You are the last normal one.
Because I'm normal.
Yes. And no Christmas podcast, everybody. So I took that weekend off because I don't know why. Because it's Christmas. Who wants to listen on Christmas? I took Christmas and Thanksgiving off. So, all right, James, thank you so much for coming on. And folks, I have there's a couple of big surprises in the Predictions podcast. A couple of appearances you wouldn't expect that are going to be great. So thank you, everybody. Please join the Patreon, even if you want to just do the $3 level and help me stay afloat. And if not, enjoy the free podcast. And thank you for listening. And thank you, James.
Thank you, Karen.
All right, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. Paranormal Karen. She's a spooky kind of queen. Paranormal Karen. She's an angel without wings. Comedian, ghost hunter, conscious exploring. She's a funny gal and a real woo pal. She's Paranormal Karen.